Tannenberg. We're on Xbox One X. This is indeed enhanced. We're getting a push towards a 4K resolution with no HDR support. This is a tactical shooter with a focus on infantry-based combat. It's aiming to be authentic to the time period, and I think it might be familiar to those that have tried out or done. This is sort of an alternate on that game, you know, a different sort of setup, but around the same vein in regards to the style of play and the multiplayer action at hand. So while this might not necessarily be the prettiest of shooters, it's actually kind of well done and fairly fun to play. So you're set up in these squads. It kind of feels like Battlefield if you're familiar with that big series, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. It's squad based, but yet you're in larger groups of combat and you're going around on this large map trying to take positions. There are a good selection of maps and a very intensely varied offering of maps at that, and each one feels distinctly different, not only in terms of the layout but also the theme, the setting, and the environment that's being present. There's all kinds of different environments and styles of play present, and levels of verticality. I wonder if I actually kill my player doing this. I don't know. I'm trying to get that. There's achievement, I think, for falling to your death. Anyways, with this being a multiplayer focused title, you are aiming to eliminate and destroy the other players that you're battling against. There's supposed to be 40-player lobbies with the option of bots coming in too, in order to fill any of the missing roles. So this is a type of multiplayer experience that you don't really need to worry about the player lobby quantity, because you'll always be able to play with other people. And I think that's kind of important in multiplayer shooters of today, or even of the past that kind of didn't have it, is to have this aspect of, you know, being able to continuously play despite any issues with the community. But I think there's actually some fairly hardcore individuals in regards to supporting this type of shooter title. Regardless, bots will always be present. You'll always be able to play this. There are also private lobbies too, if you just want to play it that way. There's like no single player or anything like that. This is a multiplayer focused game, and I think they do generally deliver on that experience here. Got him with the shovel. In regards to the style of play that's present. Ow. You also have to be careful who you're shooting, because, you know, there's some damage that can be going on if you are not watching that out. Yeah. So this is sort of inspired by the Battle of Tannenberg in 1914, one of the most iconic encirclement battles in history. Ow. Players will be able to use a wide range of weapons and tools, players as in us, across a number of very authentic and historic fronts. And really, it does actually have a large range of maps present, and I think the maps themselves are actually fairly large in scale, with a lot of interesting flow sections to them. You know, you gotta watch out for barbed wire. It's very, very trench-based, because World War I was very much a trench-based, you know, sort of system. And while I'm not really, you know, playing into that too well, because I'm running around like a maniac, you can actually really heavily rely on the trenches in order to move around. It does feel a little at times cumbersome in regards to the movement. Yeah. But you can adjust certain elements to your squad. There's different types of weapons. You play a different role. You can switch up roles too. But you can see in the options you get some choices in regards to how things are, you know, kind of set up, the gamma graphics and all that, and controller sensitivity. So you do get those options present if you want to play around with things to a degree, and I just wanted to mention that. So it also has chat options too, and also, you know, in-game voice communications if you want to tell your teammates to do anything in particular in regards to movement and combat. So yeah, I think it actually does kind of nail the perspective. Oh, I jumped over the barbed wire. Cool. Of being a, you know, a shooter of this time, and of this genre, providing a great selection of maps. I've been really impressed with the map rollout here. I've been playing for quite a while, and I don't think I really had a repeat. You sort of vote between two for your next map with like a rolling option for the lobbies. You can back out, it's not a big deal, but you get the gist of what I'm saying just in regards to like the map rotation. Seems to be really well done, as does the setup for playing on new maps when you're going around here. And it's just like, it's so cool. Like I talked about it, you know, just the different sort of feelings and styles of the maps, but they really do feel all different. You know, there's ones where there's a little bit more of a focus on buildings. There's others which are just really, really relying on that trench warfare. Oh jeez, where'd that guy go? Is he a friendly or an enemy? And I think it's kind of cool to have all these different options. There's like a sense of weather too. Crap. And these like really tense little battle moments. I think that's a bot. But yeah, you know, you get these like tense weathering conditions throughout the different places, just in regards to how the atmosphere feels. Sometimes it's a little bit darker, and it's kind of you know, also dark in terms of the content. Sometimes you hear like players and stuff screaming out into the distance. It's kind of nuts. I also like the sense of the style of this being sort of a push and pull kind of multiplayer. You're not just kind of rushing along the map randomly. You do have a number of key points that you're trying to take. And with that, you know, a team could come out of nowhere and sort of cut off your progression, and then you have to like retreat. And they play into that idea of, you know, momentum being a big part of how battles are won and how war, you know, kind of goes on here. You know, very rarely do I get a chance to kind of like just cut people up with that turret. A few times, but most of the time, no. He likes that. I thought he might be shooting from down there. Gotta be careful, they could really battle out in the distance. So, again, going back to visuals, I mean, you've probably been seeing for how long that there are bits of, like, pop-in and stuff like that. I do notice that weapons also have, like, a pretty good, like, snap or, like, auto-aim on them. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of helpful for the style of rifles we're using. But, yeah, the environments, I like the gritty look of it. It looks like a bit of an older shooter, but, you know, considering, like, the team efforts, this isn't, like, you know, dice rolling on this game. It's very much, I think, a smaller team setup. That's actually the efforts behind what this is. And I think with that, they actually do a really good job of, you know, sort of extending maybe even past what the expectations would be for that team to build this kind of game. Just in terms of, you know, the authenticity, the player models, while not like super high res, are actually quite detailed in regards to, you know, authentic little badges and designs, and the weapon models look really good. Like, see, look at the character, all the little buttons and all that. They seems really authentic to the era. And I think that's sort of important if you are trying to do like a hardcore historical shooter. I mean, I actually kind of like the visuals here. It's super gritty and intense. You get like a pretty good draw distance. The pop-in isn't anything that's too distracting in regards to certain like shadows and that, you seeing that. But, you know, if you're just kind of playing, running around or sitting there shooting and blasting, you're really not going to notice things too much. Especially since you are so focused on trying not to die. I'm getting like shot in the back here. That's a teammate. That guy in the tree line isn't, but I think somebody maybe is behind me. Yeah. And it's just kind of like really tense too, right? Because, you know, a single shot could basically end your life. You gotta be smart with how you're moving. You gotta work with your teammates, and you actually gotta take positions and also watch your counter up there. The matches are pretty long, but, you know, they don't feel that they take forever, which is kind of nice. Some of these large-scale multiplayer games like this feel like they just stretch on and on and on, and you never get like any downtime. But, you know, you play and then you're like, okay, I'll go into another one, and they just kind of really flow and roll well into one another, and I think that's great. This really does capture that authentic horror of the war, I think, you know, in terms of the gore and the style of play, with I believe an option to adjust the gore too, if that's your sort of thing. You don't want that, I believe that was in the little notes that I read prior to getting into this. Should not have walked out to the open there. There's a lot of guys running there. I don't even know if I've done that well this match, but I'm just kind of having fun running around trying to get these positions going, you know, trying to be helpful to the squad coming down here. Oh, we've got the gas. I forgot to mention that, you know, you have to actually put on the gas mask. And you can hide the HUD too if you want like a more authentic HUD. That's right on the D-pad. Kind of a cool thing just for authenticity, you know, really throwing yourself in there. And I think it's kind of cool that they do like the gas horrors of the war and stuff, because that's a little bit different too. You know, you gotta think of that part of the era. A little bit of a disgusting way to do war is with, you know, kind of gas and stuff like that. But it happens, so, you know, it's good that they don't shy away from that. And I think they also maybe have some interesting, you know, historical fronts that maybe a number of similar titles, because there's not a whole lot of World War I specific shooters. There's more nowadays, but, you know, most of them focus on World War II, where there's a little bit more varied weaponry, and it's a little bit more of direct conflict, whereas World War I was a lot of, you know, trench battles, trench combat, and stuff like that. So it's a very different style of play, and you get all these like weird fronts, and I think they just generally handled that aspect quite well, and trying to capture all the little details and authenticities of what the war was like. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this look at, you know, kind of Tannenberg, even though it wasn't necessarily the best at blasting people. I actually went on a roll the previous match. I shot like 4 people in one little bundled spot. I was like, whoa, that's insane, because, you know, it's hard to do in this in regards to, you know, being able to take on enemies. Oh jeez. But I was like dipping and dodging out of an elevated cover point, which is a big part of like the trenches. You know, sometimes you get those lines of sight, ooh, great shot, that just give you a huge advantage over battling others. So yeah, 40-player battles, AI bot support to fill anything that's missing, and generally a decent time. I think it's a fairly solid game. I had fun with it. If this seems like your type of shooter, you know, I don't necessarily think you'll be disappointed with it. It's just like a very different type of game, and something that is a little bit unique.